And we're recording.
Okay. Get my timer going. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you from somewhere dark, damp, and devoid of hope. No, it's not your mom's basement, it's Netherdeep. I'm your host, Conor O'Brien, and joining me as always is my co-host, Martin O'Dwyer.
I like that one a lot. I actually do like that. I was expecting some other kind of nerd pun, but I was not expecting for your mom's basement, which is just perfect. Like, let's go. Yeah.
Damp, dark, and devoid of hope.
The Netherdeep is when your mom's basement floods. That's how the Netherdeep forms.
Basically, yeah. If you notice dampness in your basement, get that checked out because mold can form.
Yeah.
How are you today, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm a little sore from gym stuff and stuff, but it's been a fun week. D&D is going well. New Critical Role book is very fun. And yeah, just I think I'm finally up to date on season 3 of Critical Role. I was like 2-3 episodes behind, but I watched like 2 episodes I think last week and 1 this week, so I think I'm up to date. I'm really enjoying this campaign actually.
I also went to the gym this morning for the first time in a couple of weeks. Just because, I know. I had a really good stretch there when I first started, and there was even a point where I was going like 3 times a week, and I'm like, this is ideal. If I can just do it like 3 days a week, perfect. I'm getting a little bit of cardio in. I'm not doing like a lot of weight stuff or anything like that, but just a little bit to be like active more so than anything else. And I was really enjoying it. And then like before Christmas, I had a whole thing where my cat was unwell, so like that was like multiple trips to the vet in a week and like driving up to Galway to like visit a specialist and all this other stuff. After like 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks of dealing with that, we were just out of the habit entirely. And then after Christmas, I'm like, I'm going to get right back into it. And then I just, my motivation's just been kind of shot. But I went today. I'm going to try and get back into it proper. I'm behind on Critical Role significantly, but it's only because my YouTube is weird right now. My YouTube is I've gone down some different rabbit holes I would normally go down, and now my algorithm is suggesting all this stuff to me, and I'm like I watched one video about like Dead Space and the lore of Dead Space, but now it's just all Dead Space content. Yeah, and like it can be I'm like it's basically Dead Space content, the occasional D&D lore video. And also I'm getting like a lot of like reaction stuff, as in like first time watching this movie or whatever, because you and I are both crack fiends for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely a good term for it. Yeah, no, mine is kind of similarly ruined because I did the whole thing where I was watching Vox Machina and then I would go back and watch other people watch it for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And now if I click on the home button where it'll like give you your recommendations, it'll just be like, these 36 channels that are now doing Legends of Vox Machina reaction / reviews. This video I've seen like 13 times already, and like 14 videos about like medieval history and combat.
Yeah, I did a weird kind of thing during the week because I was thinking about like my homebrew world, as you know, is kind of like based in a technological equivalent of like the 1800s. It's like well, maybe a little bit more, not quite accurately the 1800s, but like bows, crossbows, and firearms, like breech load firearms, all exist in my world. And I was like, why would you use any of those? Like, what are the different kind of purposes that you would use them and stuff like that? So I went into like a bit of research on that, and I went down this really big rabbit hole of different types of guns and how crossbows evolved over time and stuff like that. And like bows are like good in like close quarters, like relatively good in close quarters, because you can load a bow very fast, but a crossbow you have to like put your foot on and crank it back and everything. So bows win out right there. But then bows are not very accurate over long range. The advantage of a bow is you can fire like a volley of arrows into a crowd of people and you're almost guaranteed to hit someone. But if you're talking about whether or not you're trying to hit a single target from like think about when what's his name, the Game of Thrones North.
Ramsay.
When Ramsay was shooting the
Rickon.
youngest Rickon, thank you. He was using a bow, but like he was really far away, and I get like
that was an English longbow.
No, don't get me wrong. I did like in terms of like the actual distance a longbow can cover, absolutely very long range. accuracy over long range, not so much.
That's
like
why
he
they
would
put clusters of them together and had them all shooting the one volley. That's why they fired in volleys. Yes.
And that's what they fired in volleys. Because you were more, and there was a psychological element to it as well, because it was meant to, like, if you see a hail of arrows come down and like 20 people around you just drop dead, it's scary. Like,
I'm just running 300 lines in my head now. Our arrows will block out the sun, so we will fight in the shade. Oh, so good, like so good. But that's a historic. That was like historic. I think I remember right. That's like an actual thing a Spartan said to a Persian when they said that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, because the Spartans really, like, they were warriors, but they really prided themselves on being witty and, like, be the ability to, like, no, seriously, like, because I think, now, my Greek history is not phenomenal, but, like, from what I remember of it, because I watched a bunch of, like, The Real Truth of 300 Spartans when I was, like, 14.
Yeah.
And from what I remember, it was, like, they were trained as warriors from a very, very early age, obviously with the Agogo and stuff like that. But there was also quite an awful lot of importance put on intelligence and being able to debate each other and like sarcasm and wittiness were like really highly prized. So like that's it. If I remember right, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is actually like a historically recorded thing that a Spartan said to a Persian.
That's pretty badass line, to be fair.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then like that's bows, bows, and also bows are quite quiet as well.
That's one thing I was going to say. Bows are silent. Yeah.
And then like crossbows, I was like, what's the kind of advantage of a crossbow? Crossbows were used to break.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Power.
They're more accurate on like if it's one person firing at one person over long range. They're more accurate than a bow. They don't have as long of range, but they will hit more accurately over a slightly shorter range. They were used to break cavalry charges. So whereas like you could fire a volley of arrows, but the thing is, like, you're not going to hit specifically the front line. Like, remember when the Rohirrim were charging at Pelennor Fields? You'll see guys all dotted around the place. Their horses were going down and they were buckling and stuff. But like, the main charge still remained.
Yeah.
What you want if you have a line of crossbowmen is you want to fire at that front line so they all go down at once, and then all the horses behind them have to like adjust, or they might trip over, and then it's a whole like the charge is broken, we have to like reform and try again, you know. And muskets kind of had a similar thing like that as well, where if you were charging into a line of muskets, they would break that front line of the charge, which would just ruin the entire charge for the oncoming cavalry.
They'd put a line of pikemen before either the musketeers or the archers as well.
Yes. Well, no, not if you were doing not with musketeers, because I think by that time they had like bayonets and stuff by that point.
Yeah, exactly. But like with archers, they'd be like
absolutely.
Pikes, archers, and then infantry.
Pikes in front, archers behind.
Can we turn anything into a movie quote? Let's try.
No, but yeah, it's kind of a really interesting deep dive and that kind of stuff, because I regularly revisit the idea of guns in D&D, because I want to have them be justifiably useful in my world.
Yeah.
That they're not too expensive that no one's going to use them. But I'm like, why would you use one over the other? And I think I came to the conclusion that you could feasibly use each of them in the same period of time, but for different purposes. You know?
Like, I'm almost completely certain there was at least a period of time where those three would have all been in existence and in use together at the same time.
Yeah, see, the thing is, like, I like, when I think of, like, muskets...
Because, like, swords and firearms were historically in use together at the same time as well. Like,
I mean, swords were in use up until, like, World War One.
Oh, yeah, but, like, as in, like, a primary weapon.
No, I mean, like, what they would, like, if you even look at, like, the American Civil War, they had, like, breached up weapons where they would fire maybe once, maybe they do one other reload and fire again, and by that time the charging enemy are on top of you, so you're like, right, guns away, swords out, it's up close time, you know?
Or bayonets.
Often there's the mounted bayonets on the front. But yeah, no, it's interesting, like, and I think you can...
No, please don't tell me Connor's frozen. No.
They can all be like part of the same period. I went my audio went there, didn't it?
And video. Yeah, about, I'll say 5 seconds maybe. 10 maybe.
Basically what I was trying to say is that guns, crossbows and bows can all be useful in D&D.
They totally can.
maybe we'll do an episode on that at some point.
Anyone can make a bow and arrow if they have access to wood and tools. If you want to make a crossbow, it's a bit more expensive, but you get a lot more power and accuracy out of it. But it's less expensive than a gun, which gives you more power and more accuracy, but is way more expensive and also way louder than the other previous two.
Also, is like bows require more training. They're easier to make and far cheaper to make, but they require more training. Crossbows, the whole thing about a crossbow is you don't need to hold the arrow. Yeah. You can literally just point it, hit the little switch, and bang, the bolt or the bullet's going to fly.
Do you know what's one thing I'm surprised I've never seen anyone do in D&D? Make like a modern recurve bow in D&D. Like one of those ones where you draw it and you can like click and lock in the string. And like you could take your hand off the string and it's locked.
Oh, that's a compound.
Sorry, no, you can't take your hand off the string, I don't think. But yeah, I'm surprised. I've literally never seen anyone even float the idea of making like a modern compound bow in D&D. Because you could totally do it. You could totally goddamn do it. Just make it steampunk.
So I mean, you could do like a gnome or a dwarf who has like a steampunk bow.
If you've ever even looked at those modern like hunter bows, like but they have all these like wheels and pulleys and stuff on them, so that you can lock the string in place for the shot, and easy just reflavor that with like gears and cogs and stuff for magic, whatever you want to do. That would be awesome. That would be so sick. Yeah. If I was like in a one shot with someone and they were like, oh yeah, I'm an archer. Oh, where's your bow? And they pulled out like a Hawkeye bow where he can like fold it out and stuff. I would like, that's the sickest thing I've ever seen.
There was a really throwaway scene in like season 3 of Arrow on CW, where he was going to like face down the League of Assassins, and he literally like he'd just been on a plane to whatever country they were in, and he was walking up to the entrance to their temple, their main home base or whatever, and he pulled out what looked like a little orb, and he just kind of clicked it in his hand. It was about the size of double the size of a tennis ball, and he clicked a little button, and the whole thing just unfolded into a bowl. And it was really dumb. It made no sense, but it was a cool scene to watch.
At least with the Hawkeye one, the whole conceit is that it's a thing, and he can use it like a bow staff as well, because the limbs like fold up and become like rigid steel, like a rigid steel thing, and like I always thought that was really sick. God, man, Hawkeye's a lot cooler than people give him credit for. Particularly if you've watched the show. The show is awesome.
The show is very good. Yeah. The show is very, very good.
That final scene where they're making trick arrows, that was like so... I was like, this is like such a... artificer. This is like such artificer stuff. Where you're like, you've like a table of arrowheads and you're like, okay, let's get to work.
It is absolutely what the Arcane Archer should be, but is not.
Connor has strong feelings on the Arcane Archer.
I won't bring it up now. I brought it up before. It's a really, really good concept, and I love that there's a fighter subclass that's like, this is the fighter archer subclass. I just feel like it's underpowered, and you don't get to use your abilities very often, and a bunch of stuff like that. We should have we done it? We haven't done an episode where we're just like all of our problems with 5e.
Next week.
We could do.
Maybe we'll see. That's definitely
on the roster.
Definitely add it to the list for sure. That'll be actually a really fun one. It'll just be me ranting about fucking melee classes for like 20 minutes.
it'll be me harping on about the Arcane Archer and the
Elemental Monk.
Yeah. And it would have been the Ranger had not been for all the Tasha's fixes. And now Ranger, I think, is probably one of the more powerful classes.
Actually, no, it'll be an hour of me talking about strength bows.
Oh, strength bows, yeah.
Yeah, we got a good 20 minutes of me doing that in a previous episode before.
You're right, though. I mean, like, bows take a lot of upper body, like shoulder and like bicep strength to draw and hold.
It's your back muscles. You draw a bow with your back muscles.
That's me, like shoulder, like back here. You're drawing like that.
Yeah. No, but like it's the bigger back muscles that pull. That's why you... No, sorry, that's an English longbow. Sorry, yeah.
And we just established I don't go to the gym as often as you, so I don't know all the muscles. I assume they're everywhere, but I don't know.
I don't know this from the gym. I know this from watching a historical medieval combat channel on YouTube. So I reaffirm my nerd status. It's like, to draw an English longbow, you can't draw it with your arms. You're supposed to like hold out, and you kind of hold it like that, and you go like this, and like use the muscles of your back to pull it, because it's got such a ridiculously heavy draw weight.
Okay, this is the last thing before we move on to the actual topic of today's episode. Did you ever see how Japanese archers draw theirs?
Yes, the
Where they knock it and they raise it and they
yeah.
bring both down at the same time?
I think it's called. Oh god, it begins with K. It's not. No, Komodo is like a different style of weapon. I know the name for this. It's like Kyushi. I think it's Kyushi. It's like Kyushi. I'm right. Hang on. Like
just you Google.
Stall and I'm good. Kyushi archer.
I'm stalling right now. This is how I stall. Stall.
I was so close. I was so goddamn close.
What is it?
It's like Kyushu.
Kyushu.
What is Japanese archery called? Kyudo. Yeah, Kyudo. I was so goddamn close. God damn it.
But it's really cool, especially I've seen like shooting demonstrations of Japanese archers, and they'll do a thing where like they get low, so they're usually on one knee when they do it, and they do that and they draw down and they fire, and then they go flat on the ground with one leg outstretched, and they will draw and knock, so they're down low so that the back firing line can fire over them cleanly. So that it'll literally be like rain of archers, ducks down, next one fires, they can stand back up again, you know?
Have you ever seen they do that as well, but for like they do competition ones where they're on horseback, and what they is they have like a line of targets down a wall, and they have a thing almost like a list from a joust where it's like just a track the horse runs down, and literally let it go. They're going like full speed on the horse, and they do the same, like draw it over their head, bring it down, and there's like let it go, and like full gallop on a horse, and the dude like this girl just comes out and goes boom, and immediately like hits the bullseye. I was like, god damn, like I don't. Has anyone ever been like drive by bow down? Like, I don't know, what's the term for that? Like a drive by archery?
A gallop by.
We'll workshop it.
Yeah, okay. That's another thing I got kind of down a rabbit hole on this week, because I was looking up
drive by shootings.
No, I was looking at like geopolitical stuff, like a fellow who did an examination of the geopolitics of Faerun.
I've watched that channel actually.
Yeah, it's some good stuff. But there was some stuff on it that was about like northern Asia and stuff like that, and all the wide open plains in Russia and like and Mongolia and all this stuff, and why they were basically like the F-16s of their day, because they were insanely fast on horseback, they could cover vast distances, and they were wicked accurate with a bow.
Mongolian archers, man.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of like much faster, much cheaper, much lighter like Sherman tanks just rolling on in. Not even Sherman tanks, because Sherman tanks weren't great historically. The German ones. German tanks were far superior in World War II.
German crap. What were that? No,
Panzers.
I can't. No, Panzer is just the German word for tank.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I feel like I should know that because I studied German in school. Well, studied.
Yeah, it is, because the rocket launcher was called like the Fire Panzer or something like that. I just remember from COD. I had a point there. Oh yeah, it was actually.
It was called the Panzer.
Oh, was it? Oh, weird.
The Panzer IV was the World War II one.
Straightforward.
Either way, look.
Yeah, but anyway,
we're getting off topic. Martin.
Yes.
A new book came out this week.
Yes, it did. Call of the Netherdeep.
Call of the Netherdeep. In case you guys hadn't caught on by our intro, so the Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep book arrived this week. It's actually pretty good. I'm quite impressed with the content of it.
For like the first official like Critical Role D&D book as well.
The first official adventure book. Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of though, because you're kind of getting onto something I want to talk about there. This book, first of all, is a really cool story, good setting. It's got interesting kind of an interesting, how'd you call it, format of play, I guess. But one thing is that if you own the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, these books pair beautifully, because the first two places you go in this book are a place called Jigao, which is in Jorhas, and also in Jorhas you also go to a place called Bazzoxan. Now Jigao was not visited in Campaign 2 of Critical Role, but Bazzoxan was. And you get to visit these two locations, but the thing is, if you have the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, you have access to way more information on both of these settlements, and could like very nicely flesh out the starting of these adventures. They pair quite nicely. There's a couple of things that this book has that I would have expected Wildemount to have. We can get into that later, but it's interesting. It's a good book though. I'm really enjoying it. I really like the art.
Yes.
One thing they did, and this is kind of a little bit of a deviation, but one thing they did that they haven't done in other books I've seen thus far, they have an Appendix E, which is story concept art, and it's just some like concept art of cities and some of the bad guys and stuff like that in some of the characters. It's not a huge
Ooh.
section, but there's some really interesting, cool looking stuff in here. And I really love it. I really hope they start doing this more often. I think they did it in now that I think about it, I think they also did this in what's the Underdark adventure? I always forget the name of it.
The Underdark one, Out of the Abyss.
Yeah, Out of the Abyss. They have a lot of concept art at the back in Out of the Abyss as well, of like dwarven structures and mind flayers and stuff like that.
Sorry, I just got to the concept art for the armor of the Aurora watch. Oh, that's nice. I'm literally sorry. I'm just like I'm so in like fashion armor mode at the moment from playing Elden Ring. Like just saw that and I was like, yeah. I got some really sick armor last night actually. Oh my god. I got some really sick armor and a great sword, roughly the size of a small bus.
Oh my god! So okay, something I just noticed here. Go to the art of the rivals, and look at the goblin and look at his chest piece.
Oh yeah. That it's the same on the actual official art.
I did not notice that before.
And
his chest piece is shaped like a D12.
Yeah, because he's from the Church of the Luxon.
Because he's from the Luxon, yeah.
Yeah, he's got his holy symbol is a D12. It's like a 2D image of a D12.
I saw that before. I saw his symbol before.
Yeah.
I did not see that his full chest plate is like, it looks like an Iron Man chest plate.
Almost, yeah. And you notice that his even his pauldrons are kind of slightly squared off as well.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Anyway, sorry, we're getting distracted by art that our listeners, viewers, cannot see. So, bang, let's get into some stuff about Calls and Netherdeep and why it's actually a pretty. I think this is a pretty solid adventure. I don't run most of the adventures. We talked about this before.
Neither of us do really. We do homebrew.
We don't. No, we do homebrew stuff, and we still buy these books because we like them for inspiration and the additional content, like if they give you an extra class or some additional monsters or whatever.
Stripping them for parts, as James says.
Stripping them for parts, which is a very perfectly valid way to
100%.
purchase and consume these books. But this actually has a very interesting story and I've described it to you a little while ago as being very palatable. I find like some adventures you pull from D&D, from 5th edition, can be very dense, and it's a little cumbersome to try and see what the overall scope of the story is.
We're having some slight technical issues again.
I'm back now.
There we go.
Okay, God, this is gonna be annoying.
Lots of editing for you today.
I'm just gonna leave that in.
Oh really? Because including me doing the Rooster Teeth technical difficulties music.
Oh, that I might need to play, Barton. Thank you very much for that one. Okay, so as I was saying, I don't know what I was saying. I lost my place.
You were saying that the adventure,
is very palatable.
Yeah, palatable because it's not quite so dense, and you kind of don't lose the thread of stuff.
Exactly, and like of all the adventures that are out there, one of the few adventures I find really good and very understandable, and from a DM perspective, I can get the full scope of it at a glance, is Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Yes. It has a lot of options, but like it's a small story. It takes place within a relatively small area. Does the players, all the movers and shakers in the story pretty much right from the get-go. I think it's a really great adventure, and we've often said like if you ever wanted to do a very first time playing D&D running a pre-written adventure, Dragon Heist is better than Lost Mines of Phandelver, and it's better than most of the other suggested ones. I've heard the D&D Essentials adventure is quite good as well.
Yeah. Like I've a couple of friends in work who are trying to talk. Well, I've said I will run a D&D game for them, not a campaign, but like one shots. So I'm just putting that off till the time where I can find the time and energy to do that. But I'm legit after reading this for our episode today, obviously, and just because I like these books anyway. But like after reading sort of the story overview and a quick flick through some of the chapters and stuff, like I'm almost considering maybe doing this for that, so I don't have to make up anything new. Just so I don't have to like take that tiny little sliver of work off my plate.
If you want actually. and this is a bit off topic, but with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, I think it's like 5 chapters it's divided into. The first chapter is basically a standalone adventure where at the end of it you're rewarded a tavern.
Thank you.
You could probably knock it out in a session. And there's a dungeon crawl. There's a couple of combats. There's some like intrigue of like bigger things going on and stuff. But you could probably knock it out in a session, if not 2.
Cool.
And it's a really good kind of self-contained story at the start of a slightly larger story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this story, really cool, really good setup and lore. For those of you who aren't aware, obviously Matt, having his own world of Exandria, has its own kind of creation lore involving a pantheon of gods who were kind of once allied and then like fractured and broke into 2 different groups who fought each other in a war which was known as the Calamity.
Yes.
And with that, the gods basically, some of them were banished from the world and the rest of them kind of bowed out, like we should just leave mortals alone.
Yeah, they built a divine gate to keep the gods separate physically from the material plane.
Exactly. And that's been that way for like, I think it's been probably about 1,000 or so years. I think it's about 1,500 to 1,000 years since that happened in worlds.
God.
But I'm guessing there. I have vague chronological ideas of that.
I'm good on the general lore, not so much the exact timelines, which is a bit shameful for someone who likes history as much as I do.
Yeah. But yeah, and that's kind of the setup of the world. Now, this adventure takes place, like I said, it starts off in Jorhas. So if you're very familiar with Wildmount or Campaign 2 of Critical Role, that's going to be a very familiar starting ground for you. And then following that, you go to the continent of Marquette.
Marquette, yeah.
And to the city of Ank'Harel. And the rest of it takes place in Ank'Harel, and in case the name Netherdeep wasn't enough of a hint for you, beneath Ank'Harel. Fair warning, actually, before you go any further, and we talked about this beforehand.
Yeah.
There will be some minor spoilers. I'm going to get into heavy story stuff, but there will be some like kind of overview ideas of the story and stuff here that we can't really talk too much about the book without giving into it, like a little bit of the backstory of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like the story overview gives some pretty explicit spoilers for the big thing, the main thread, main plot line of the module. So we'll probably avoid going into that in too much depth. But the basic outline of it is, like as Conor said, you start in Jorhas, you arrive to Jigao. In Jigao, when you get there is a festival going on, and as part of this festival is actually where you first encounter one of the new things from this book. If we maybe want to take a little side branch and talk about that for a bit, is you encounter a rival team of adventurers who are started out in this book, and what's really cool about them is they actually do level with you as you go through the tiers, because this, as an adventurer, if you started, I believe you start at level 3 and it'll take you all the way to level 12. So it'll take you from low tier to mid tier to basically right on the doorstep of the very high tier of D&D. And your rivals scale with you. Their stat blocks are from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, which is really, really cool. They're all super interesting and stuff. Just to cap off the story thing before we might talk about the rivals a bit. You arrive there, you enter into a competition where you have to go and swim into this grotto, and in this grotto you can find a specific artifact that will give the player a vision that will send them on the quest. Yeah, and that is the best I can do to not be really, really spoilery about like the actual main thread of the game of the adventure.
Absolutely. I think if you're listening to this and you're a DM who's maybe thinking about running this, you're probably okay because you're going to read the adventure beforehand anyway. I think if you're a player whose DM doesn't normally play pre-written adventures, you're probably okay as well. The only people who probably would have to be a bit wary are players whose DM does tend to run pre-written stuff. You would be the people who maybe need to be wary that we might cover some stuff that may spoil certain aspects of the story for you. But yeah, that's very much the setup of it. There's some stuff that happens throughout history with some gods fighting one another. One individual that was born. There's something very interesting actually I heard so this book focuses a lot on this the idea of Exandria's second moon, which is called Ruidus. And Ruidus is kind of this, like, it's a red moon. It's kind of it's known to people of Exandria as kind of an ill omen whenever it's like in full like bloom and stuff like that. And particularly in this case, people born under that moon, so under that full moon, when it's in its kind of, what would you call it? It's full waxing, when it's like fully. Because waning would be when it's like in decline, and then waxing would be full. I don't know. I don't know moon stuff.
Waxing is on the way to full. Waning is on the way away from full. So full moon
Yes.
is just full moon, I guess.
Okay, full moon. Okay, when it's a full moon. See, I
When,
don't know moon stuff.
when it's at its zenith.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. So anyone born at that time, there is a bit of a superstition that you are doomed to be a person of ill fate or ill omen. You will bring misery or bad luck to people. Yeah.
Yeah. We can probably go into that a little bit more and how it ties into the actual story of that specific character if we don't specifically mention how they tie into the main thread, maybe.
Do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll do it. So the story opens. It gives it back, like when the story synopsis, it gives a background, as Connor said, to the thing, and in terms of like the founding of Exandria, the Divine War, the Calamity, all that jazz. And we meet a character called Elixion, who is he's a human who was born under Ruidus, and therefore is believed to have been cursed since birth to be some kind of like terrible evil. But he basically decided to take that on and go do everything he can to prove that no, I will be a force for good in this world. So he prayed to three prime deities. We literally did this like 10 minutes before we started recording. It was like Sehanin, Coralon, and Evandra. Yeah, I did it. I did it. The Moonweaver, the Changebringer, and the Archart. Yes. Okay, cool. I remembered them properly this time. Sorry, this was a thing. But yes, he basically prayed to them 3 times, and they answered him 3 times and blessed him more and more, and he basically became a semi-divine champion of the gods. And he then got into a battle with Groomsh in Ankarel that caused an awful lot of destruction and resulted in the creation of the Netherdeep.
Correct. And it is this is basically that kind of was put to bed for a few hundred years, or maybe 1,000 odd years, and then now, like Martin said, with the finding of an artifact, you're kind of thrown into a quest where you need to uncover some of the ramifications of that battle with Grumsh and the outcomes of what happened there. It's very cool. Let's, like you mentioned, Martin, let's talk about the rival system for a minute, because honestly, this is maybe one of my favorite parts of this book. It makes me want to kind of do something similar in a homebrew sense as well. So the rival system that appears in this book is basically a whole other adventuring party. There's a whole other group of people that are also on an adventure. They're a band of misfits. They're doing their thing. They're taking jobs, but they're your competitors in a very kind of Japanese anime sense, where like, what?
Just keep going.
Oh no.
No, sorry, it's our name, and just keep going, please.
Okay. So they're your competitors in a very kind of Japanese anime sense, where like they're not your straight up enemies. In fact, both of you are working toward a similar goal. Yeah. Both of you are actually compelled onto this adventure, and both of you want similar outcomes. But you want to be the heroes of the story, so you're kind of working against one another to see who will be the heroic team in this sense. I haven't seen this come up in a pre-written adventure before, so I think it's a really, really cool idea.
I think like the closest thing we've had to in another pre-written adventure would be maybe the relationships dating sim stuff from Strixhaven.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in Dragon Heist, there's something similar where there are multiple parties all
they do faction stuff in Dragon Heist, don't they? Yeah.
But like the Dragon Heist had a whole thing where like depending on the season, you could have a different person you're competing with to try and pull off the heist, you know?
I just mean in terms of like, it's like this is a character, how you interact with them is entirely up to you. They're both of you are kind of generally indifferent to each other until your relationship progresses to a point where that may change. And it's similar here with the rivals.
Absolutely, and that's actually something as well. Is if you read through the rival section, they mention tracking the attitudes, because as you said, when you first meet, you meet during that trial in Chigao, and you're relatively indifferent. You're like, oh, we're a bunch of people, they're a bunch of people. We're both trying to win this contest, so whatever, who cares? We're both going to try very hard, but depending on how those interactions go, and this is up to the DM. I think it's very cool. The DM has to track individual members of that party and how they feel about your individual party members. So for talk's sake, if you were playing, let's just say you're a human barbarian, you're currently playing Martin. If you were playing that person and during the trial you did something to hinder or slow down that party, maybe you collapsed a passage, or maybe you left a trap behind thinking this will slow them down. One of them, if one of them falls into that trap or gets hurt, they're maybe going to think, wow, I really don't like that lug guy because he did this to me. And it's up to the DM to track this and remember that in future encounters, and when I say encounters, I don't mean combat necessarily, although it can come to that.
Oh, totally.
But in future encounters when you guys cross paths, maybe you will then be antagonistic towards one another, rather than being semi-indifferent. And there's even like rules in there for like you might help them in certain circumstances depending how your game goes. You might have opportunities to help them, and then you might make friends with one or two members of that group. And there's a part as well that kind of mentions these are not bad people. Just because they're rivals with you, they both, you're both competing for similar goals. They are not bad guys. They are not the antagonists of this story. In fact, it's strictly or specifically mentioned in the book that they are not bad people. If an encounter does come to blows where you guys end up fighting, they will go for non-lethal attacks. And also there is a cleric traveling with them as well, and he will use Spare the Dying on all of your party if they happen to get the upper hand and beat you. I know why Martin is smiling right now, and it's because of the name of this particular Goblin Cleric.
We'll get to it.
But yeah, I think it's a really cool system. One other thing they mentioned about it as well is that the rivals should be preying, quote unquote preying, P-R-E-Y, on the flaws of the PCs, which I think is a really, really interesting. I like to have players pick flaws and ideals and all that because I feel like that informs a character far, far more than alignment, in my opinion. And I like that this is baked into the actual flow of the game, where it's like, what is your flaw? Oh, you're really competitive? Perfect. This person's gonna like try to goad you into doing something stupid because you're so competitive, And like if you're playing your character correctly, you might fall into that trap and stuff like that, And I feel like there's a lot of fun role play opportunities there. And because these people are recurring characters, I feel like there's a lot of fun that could be had with these recurring characters as each of you grows in strength and power, but also like maybe desperation as well as you get closer and closer to your goal. So it could be very interesting.
It's really good, and they do a really good job of like fleshing them out as characters as well. Because they give you like a paragraph description about each and kind of like give you a little bit of their background, their goals, what they aim for. And I think actually, if I remember right, there's actually like a table. There's like a I didn't spot this on my first read through, but it's great. There's a battle chatter table, like stuff they'll say when they're fighting you. So like AO, which is the God, some of these are very like anime. But like Ayo, and I say that as someone who watches anime. Ayo. Oh my god, if you beat this is just the stupidest joke ever just popped into my head. But if just like I could just imagine like someone beating their team and just going LMFAO. Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm sorry.
Move along. Yeah, move it.
But yeah, her thing was, okay, team, they're off balance. Rally. Like it's such like JRPG enemy like. Yeah. Pikachu, I choose you! Use quick attack! Yeah. Have you had enough? Yeah, just give up. You're finished.
I will never give up. Not as long as there is strength in my body.
Oh god. Like, and then, there's
actually something to mention about Aosh as a person. I remember when the art for the cover of this book first came out, everyone was like, she looks kind of like an orc, and she's blue. Is that Chester and Ford's daughter? And everyone's losing their marbles. She is not. In fact, actually, interestingly, and I didn't realize this about Matt's world and how he treats Ganassi or Shanassi in his world. He treats them a little bit like tieflings, where they might just sprout up out of nowhere. And in this case, she has two orc or half orc parents, and she's a half orc herself. She's a half orc.
She's a quarter orc.
She's a quarter orc, I guess, because she has two full half orc parents. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But she was just born with whatever water Shanassi gene or elemental kind of magic was in her. So that's why she's blue. She's actually just
Sort of like
I think it's very cool.
Sort of like how two horses can have a baby and it'll be a donkey.
Is that a thing?
I think it's a thing. That's somewhere in my head.
Okay. You said that very confidently. Then you said, "I think that's a thing." So
I'm not a farm guy, but it's just a thing. Like I remember can two horses.
I can see you're not a farm guy, Martin, because I don't think actual people who own farms call themselves farm guys. Anyway, I just thought our parentage was quite interesting because everyone lost their marbles when they're like, tusks and blue skin? Is that Jester and Ford's daughter?
I feel like this is definitely a thing that someone said to me when I was a kid that I have just carried forward through my entire adult life and never questioned. Because I remember something, it was like, if you wiped out all the donkeys in the world, like in one go, by like next year there'd be donkeys again because horses would give birth. It's not important. We're talking about genetics in D&D.
So someone told you this when you were a kid and it just stuck with you?
Yeah, it feels like one of those.
If anyone listening has horses and or donkeys, please comment below and tell Martin exactly how their parentage functions.
Do you know what? I'm okay. You can just tell me I'm wrong. I'm good.
Martin, do you want to talk about the next character?
Oh, okay. Hang on, I need to scroll. Where's he? Oh yeah, where's he actually mentioned?
He's got a little derpy head in him. I love him.
So this is a goblin. This is a goblin cleric of the Church of the Luxon called Dartmouth Warder. And for for everyone else, I'm sure that name just sounds perfectly reasonable for a goblin. But to me in particular, there's something hilarious about a goblin called Dartmouth.
Well, like it's just funny because that's an Irish name, particularly an Irish name you don't hear very often outside of Ireland. Yeah. So the fact that like it is being used elsewhere, but it's a stumpy little goblin with a derpy face is very funny.
For maybe of some of our transatlantic folks that are maybe listening or watching, that'd be the equivalent of if it was like the goblin's name was like Tim. Yeah, like Tim the goblin, or
Josh the goblin.
Yeah, or like Brody. Like Brody the goblin, like that's why I know it was like it might have been because I was reading it really late at night as well, and I was kind of really tired the first time I read it, but like I was just scrolling because I was reading it on my phone and I was just scrolling through my phone to read the rival stuff, and I was like, Dartmouth Warder goblin. I just went Dartmouth the fucking goblin. Like, what? But he's cool. I like Dermot. He seems like a nice guy. And he's got some really cringy battle dialogue as well. If you'd like to hear it, Connor.
I mean, just like Dermot's that same cleric I mentioned. He's such a good guy that even if you guys get into a fight with one another, he will use spare the dying on each of you and make sure that you all come out of the fight okay. They'll just leave you there unconscious, which is about as much as you can hope from a group of people that you just got into a scrap with.
That's why you have to kill him first.
Yes. Because he's too good? Wait, because he'll spare your lives?
Yeah, you can't leave that wild card going. No, but I do like his dialogue in battles is very like characteristic of that as well. Like the first thing they have is like, I'm here to make sure.
Before you go, give me your best Dermot the Goblin as you're doing it.
I'm here to make sure no one dies. Back off. Yeah, that's it.
You got it like that. That's Dermot the Goblin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's fun. He's got all the things he's actually got he's got a cool little feature called Searing Wrath. Range spell attack +5 to hit, range 60 feet, one creature, 2d8 radiant damage, and target is blinded until the end of their next turn.
We're starting to see the implementation. That's it. Of these new stat blocks, where they're not including long lists of spells anymore. Mm-hmm. They'll have a couple of spells they can cast, a couple times a day, and then their primary attack will be whatever their main spell is, and it's usually that's kind of not dissimilar from a Sacred Flame in how it works, bit tweaked and a bit unique to him, but it's. I quite like him. Actually, I forgot to mention. Ao is actually, she is kind of a ranger. She has a few ranger-ish spells, and she carries a harpoon, which I thought was quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
Up next we have, I'm gonna mess this up. Galsariad Ardith. Yeah, Galsariad.
That's
Ardith.
an elf name.
That is That's about as elf as you can get. Yeah, they're about a 200-year-old drow. If you're familiar with Critical Role, they are a part of the Kryn dynasty. They are loquacious, snarky, and sarcastic to a fault. Do you ever watch that? I'm just immediately, when I read this, I kind of started thinking about what his personality would be like. Do you remember that priest in Father Ted who was so ridiculously, he was like over sarcastic?
Father Jessup.
Was it Jessup?
Father Jessup, the most sarcastic priest in all of Ireland.
Yeah. And like every time, like, what was it? Mrs. Doyle just did not get sarcasm at all. She's like, Father, would you like a cup of tea? And he's, no, I'd rather die of thirst. And she's like, oh, okay, so, and she starts walking away. It's just, oh, so good. Father Jessup.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely how I would play this character. I'd play him as Father Jessup.
I just read him as like Percy Dorodo.
Oh no, you have to go way harder than Percy. Percy wouldn't make the top 10 sarcastic priests in Ireland.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, okay. The next one I actually think is real. I read this today, and I think it's one of the most interesting things in the world. So we have Ervin Wastewalker, who is a human. He's kind of the rogue of the party. He has, proficiency in stealth, and he's got dex-based weapons, and he uses poison on his daggers. Interesting thing about Ervin, he used to be a bugbear.
How did I miss this?
I only saw it today. He was previously consecuted, which is a thing that if you're familiar with Critical Role and the Luxon and all that, it means that you're put through a special ritual where if you die, whether it be of old age or whether you're killed or whatever, your soul is returned to the Luxon and then recycled into a new body. And at some point in like maybe your teen years, the memories of your past life will start to return, and you'll remember, and you could be any race. You could be like, in this case, he was a bugbear in the Kryn dynasty, and he would have to have been pretty high up in the dynasty to have been consecuted in the first place.
It's only like the best and brightest get consecuted. Yeah,
it's all the highest echelon of nobility in society and stuff. And he got reincarnated back into this into a human form, and I think he said he's just about 19 at the time of this, so he's only had his memories for a couple of years, and he's looking to like prove his worth. He doesn't like his human body. He doesn't like how frail it is and stuff compared to an enormous bugbear. So he's looking to prove that he is still very capable without going. He hasn't been in contact with his Kryn family. He's like, I want to show that I am capable of doing something like decent, and I'm very still have the same capabilities as I did when I was a powerful bugbear, but without the help of his family kind of propping him up or giving him any sort of a boost.
It must be a weird one to remember having 15-foot reach.
Yeah, I know, right? And like it's so funny because like he is now a Dexy guy who is using small daggers that are poisoned, whereas if he was a bugbear before, he could have been using
big
like hammers. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's very interesting though.
I just love the idea of someone's like, "Hey, can you get me that from the top shelf?" And he can't understand why when he reaches for it from the ground he can't catch the stuff. He's like, "Oh, this used to. Oh no. Hang on." And he just like steps up on a step ladder and gets it. Sorry, new arms. Getting used to it. Sorry, like the doctor with like new teeth.
It's actually funny you say that, new arms. Because in the third tier, so by the time you meet this character again late in the game, and I think this is very cool. He comes back by the time you reach the tier 3 of this character stat block, and when you encounter them again late in the campaign, he will have a prosthetic arm. Ooh. Because they did some other adventure, and it's really cool to hint that they're doing other adventures that you guys aren't part of. He comes back, he's got a prosthetic left arm. Apparently he got it doing some other job that you guys were not involved in while you guys were separated and stuff like that. And he just comes back and he's like, yeah, I got a new arm now. But like, if you think about it, there's a word for it. I can't remember what it is. Where it's like, it's where you have an understanding that other people are. How do I put this? It's having the realization or having the conscious thought that other people are like the main characters of their own story. If that makes sense.
Okay.
I'm doing a terrible job explaining this because I think because a lot of people think that they're kind of like. Not that they're like self-important, but like they see things through their eyes, and they don't often think about the idea that someone else is having an entirely different experience through their eyes and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I don't.
Are you on about like perspective?
No, there's a word for it, and I can't remember what it is.
Empathy.
And if I was to ask Tara about it now, she'd be able to tell me because she taught me the word. I will find out for you later, Martin.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
Thanks.
But yeah, no, sorry, but it's interesting to think that like, despite you guys being the main characters in this story because you're the players, you know, that there's still stuff going on. Because I could just see it being a thing. Like someone would be like, Ervin, you have like a new arm, and he's like, yeah, we had a job a while back. I lost my arm. It's all good now. And they're like, oh, we didn't know about that. And then he'd just be like, well, not everything revolves around you guys, which is funny because they are the players.
That'd be one where I'd like, oh yeah, we're gonna put the sneaky like dagger pop up, like punch dagger pop out in the fist there for when the next time he fights him comes around. Yeah.
And then finally we have the last member of the party, who is Maggie Keen Eyes. That's hard to say. Mm-hmm. Maggie is a 12-foot tall ogre. Drinks in bars and says her name is Maggie. She's basically the brute fighter of the team, but she's actually if you look at her stat block, she's actually wicked intelligent. My boy's wicked smart.
I was just about to do the wicked smart.
But no, she's crazy. She's really good. She actually she's looking for like a fight, but she doesn't want to just like get into a scrap with someone who's like equally strong. She wants someone who's going to tactically challenge her. She wants a worthy opponent who's like going to not just try to overpower her on the battlefield, but also try to outsmart her. And she wants to beat that person because that's a true victory in her eyes, which I think is really cool.
No, that's awesome.
And also, I always like it when they take a particular race and they kind of turn the idea of that race being like big and dumb on its head. And she's big and also really, really smart, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so they're all the rivals. You have all your typical, you got a ranger, a cleric, a wizard, a rogue, a fighter. You're basically covering all your bases there, and I think all of them are really interesting. I immediately, just reading through their stuff, I get ideas about how I would run each of them. I'd run AO as like a member of the Rat Queens, where she's effing and blinded, but she is a leader in the stuff, and she's like getting people going. I'd run Dermot. I think Dermot's kind of self-explanatory. He's kind of shy and sheepish and stuff like that.
You can know everything you need to know about Dermot's character from the expression on his face and his official art.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I said, I'd run Galsariad.
Oh, I just noticed. Dermot has tiny little pube beard stash like things around his mouth. Like he's got like the tiniest like shittiest
he's got a little scruff.
He's got the tiniest shit little puberty beard.
I'd run Galsariad as Father Jessup. Who would I run Ervin as? I don't know. He's so interesting as a character because it's like I used to be this really big, strong guy, you know, that would just power through armies and stuff like that, and now I've got to be light on my feet and quick and stuff. So
I have a suggestion: a mixture of, and it was a terrible show, but just go with me. Danny Rand from the Netflix Iron Fist show.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
In every instance, that he's like, "I am the greatest martial artist in the world," and he's, the character Danny Rand is awesome, but I'll stop. But a mixture of how Danny Rand is portrayed in that show, and Charlie Day from Always Sunny.
Is it? Are you getting that because he kind of looks like a combination of the two of them?
No, but I was like, because like in that show, like
because I do see Charlie Day there.
I can kind of see why, but like more so in the show in Iron Fist, because like he's always like barging into Colleen Wing's dojo and he's like, "You, this is wrong," and he's like kicking her students and stuff, and he's like, "I know, like I'm big strong Iron Fist," that kind of like attitude of like I was a big strong guy back home, combined with just like the complete like the kind of slightly inept mania of Charlie Day in Always Sunny.
Yeah, I like that idea because he was a really important person.
He looks like he would drink fight milk, is what I'm going to say.
He does look like he would drink fight milk. Oh, that's an Always Sunny quote for those of you who are familiar with the show.
Oh god.
So yeah, so you also have rival golds as well, by the way, which I think is again when. I just feel like these characters are so fleshed out. These guys are the stars of the show as far as I'm concerned. If I was a player in the campaign of these guys, I'd be like, okay, as soon as possible, I'm going to get the spell Sending, and I'm going to check in with these guys every single day before I go to bed. I want to know what happened. I want to know what they're up to. I just want to be friends with all of them because they seem like a really interesting adventuring party.
Yeah. No, it's like there's these rivals are more fleshed out than like 90% of actual PC D&D backstories.
Honestly, do you know why? They don't have like their back. Actually, now that you say it, right? What's that like? 3 paragraphs ish.
Yeah.
That's what all D&D backstories should be. 3 paragraphs. I know everything I need to know as a DM about these characters to run them in a game with 3 paragraphs. You should be able to do the same, players. 3 paragraphs. But yeah, so they also have, like I said, they have their rival goals set out as well. So here's what I mentioned about Maggie a minute ago. What is her goal? Start with a true tactical genius, write a song or poem that causes someone to weep with emotion, or be able to retire and never kill again. Like, those are some pretty...
Yeah.
You get a really good idea for a character just on those 3 things. Like,
what I really like is that, like, she's the fighter, right, Maggie? Maggie's the fighter.
She's the brute fighter, yeah.
Like, I love that her goal isn't, like, be the strongest in the land or become an undefeated warrior. Like, the very cliche kind of warrior stuff. Hers is much more centered. Like, even though she wants to spar with someone powerful, it's not because they're, like, spar with the strongest swordsman in the realms. It's, no, spar with a tactical genius.
And I think that she just wants to spar with them. She just wants to. She doesn't even like want to beat them and be the best. You know, she just wants to spar with this person to be able to say, to eat it. Like, you can imagine it would be like a learning exercise to her. Even if she lost, she wouldn't be upset. She'd be like, "I learned a lot in that fight. I saw what you did there. That was very clever. I'm glad I know that now. I'm better for it." You know?
And like, what I love about this is like in particular with Maggie's thing, because it just gave me an idea straight away. Is that like, you know, her third one is be able to retire and never kill again.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so if you put these rivals in just like we're saying, strip the adventure parts, use these rivals in your own homebrew game, and like say it's a thing where you run multiple campaigns in one world, you could do one campaign in that world where they feature as a rival, and say that game goes to tier 3, Maggie gets her goal, she retires. In campaign 2, you could have the players come across a retired Maggie who's now giving out quests.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or like maybe she's offering training to new upcoming fighters and adventurers and stuff.
Yeah, like
I will also throw in the I'll also throw in the one for Dermot here as well, which is just because Dermot. Protect his friends, have a life-changing holy vision, discover that he has value himself. Oh, Dermot, man.
I know, like you can just yeah.
So discover he has value himself, not just as someone who can help others.
Dermot is the keyleth of the group.
Yeah, Dermot, we must protect him.
Yeah, our lovely Gobbo boy.
Yeah.
I do also like Galsariad's one, because it's very much, I like all of these are very much in line with their character as NPCs. But like Galsariad, match wits with an archmage, like that just like that's exactly how that character would write that goal as well. Do you know what I mean? Like he wouldn't write like talk to an archmage or like debate an arch. It would match wits, like it's a battle, you know, like and like and then like discover a magical secret no one else knows and be respected by someone he respects. Like these are all like really good solid goals. They're nice and open. They give you lots of options on how to do that as well. Ervin. I just read his there. Fall in love with someone who doesn't know about his past lifetime. He's so adorable.
That's the equivalent of like any movie where someone is like either rich or famous or whatever, and they go undercover and they're like, I wanted you to love me for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did you tell me you were a famous pop star? I thought if you knew, you'd only like me for that reason.
Yeah. Oh my god. Or like every single.
Also, one of AO's ones is make a friend she can truly be herself around. Like these are not bad. Like I said it already. These are not bad people. These are genuinely, like, first of all, well-rounded characters. In a relatively compact amount of information, they are very well-rounded characters. But they have genuine human wants as well. Yeah. You know, that's a very human thing to want.
I do love that. Like, make a friend she can truly be herself around. Kill a legendary monster. Which, like, full respect. That's both sides of your personality being fed there. Fair play.
Like, I honestly, I look at this and I honestly wish that more players would do this, would pick out their goals, their aspirations, their flaws and everything, and like almost like, because I feel like that section never gets opened. Even if you pick them at the start, that section doesn't get opened much. And I'm like, I wish people would just keep a flashcard on the table, and every single time you want to like do something in the game, like run it through that. You know, put through that process and what makes sense based on the things you want in life and everything, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I would honest to God watch a television show of these guys, of this adventuring party, or a campaign of these people being played well, you know.
The gang play D&D. Bum, bum. No, is that all? No, that's Curb Your Enthusiasm. Jesus, I was nearly going to go. That's the Curb Your. No, not important. Not important. What do you want to talk about next, Connor?
Okay. Well, we're okay on time for a bit.
Yeah, we're okay on time.
We can do a brief overview on a couple of the monsters maybe that are interesting to us.
Ooh, okay.
There's a pretty solid. It's a relatively short but pretty solid list of monsters in this, as opposed to other adventures we've gotten before, like Icewind Dale, where we had a really long list of monsters and half of them were just animals that exist in a snowy tundra.
Yeah.
This is a shorter list, but everything on it is like a really good monster stat block to have in your campaign.
Yeah, and there's a couple of really interesting faction stat blocks as well.
There is, and we'll get onto that in a sec. First off, all of the creatures and monsters that we have here there's a lot of aberrations. There's a lot of stuff you could use in like a far realm aberration kind of horror, you know, kind of cosmic horror setting if you wanted to.
Do you want to get really messed up? Don't put these in the sea, put these in space.
Yeah, true, yeah. Just change your swim speed to be like fly speed in space.
I'd put the Light Devourer in space and bump it up 2 size classes.
It's eating ships, like.
No, like it's eating stars.
Oh, nice. This is off topic. There was a thing. Yeah, one of the reasons I got into D&D, and I talked about this before, was like community and Dan Harmon and stuff. And on his podcast, Harmontown, they used to play D&D at the end of each episode. And in one of the episodes, they were in a flying airship, and the airship got swallowed while in the air, up in the clouds, by a thing called the Infini Fish. And it was a massively big fish that just flies through. It's like a legend or whatever, and it swallowed their ship whole. And then like the next 2 adventures were them trying to make their way out of the Infini Fish. And there was like, it had swallowed so many people that there was a little community of people living in one of the glands of the Infini Fish, and they would like scrape stuff off the walls for food, and if other ships got in there, they'd use the wood from those ships to start small fires so they could cook their food and everything. It was the most ridiculous plot. But immediately when you said that, I was picturing that huge fish, and then it's like, you know, I don't know, 100 feet tall, and that's the Infini Fish.
Yeah, no, I just imagine like if you're doing like or put it in the astral sea, and like you're just floating through a patch of darkness in the astral sea, and you see lights in the distance, and they come towards you, and it looks like a big sun with like small stars around it, and then you just see the teeth.
Yeah, there's honestly the potential for cosmic horror stuff in this is very, very strong. I will say the book does have the at this point fairly standard section in session 0 for discussing elements of horror and stuff like that. I think early in this adventure you wouldn't have to worry about that too much. It's pretty standard D&D adventuring stuff.
Yeah.
But in the late game adventure, when you get to the Netherdeep itself and stuff, it's very cosmic horror. It's quite creepy. Your DM could go light on it, but I think realistically it's aimed at being a very creepy, unnerving atmosphere. So as usual, guys, when it comes to session 0, just, you know, make sure it's communicated to your players and between you and the DM and stuff like that, what you're okay with, what the adventure entails, and that kind of stuff, so everyone's having a good time. I want to talk about one of the monsters, which I really love, called Death's Embrace.
Yeah.
It's just a big, monstrous jellyfish.
Yeah.
It's a big jellyfish. It's quite powerful, but the thing I that really caught my eye about it, it has a 60-foot reach with its melee attack. Because it's got these long tentacles that come off it. 60 foot. And then it does piercing and psychic. And then also you are grappled if you're a certain size. And if you don't escape on the next turn. So if you start your turn grappled by... if any creature that starts its turn in the Death's Embrace space must make a DC 16 Constitution saving throw. So there's a whole thing where it can do a reel at the start of every turn, where it can pull you 20 feet closer using that tentacle. If you start your turn within the space of the creature, it pulls you right up to it, and you're basically in the underside.
That's if it's grappling.
Yeah, so it would have to attack you with a tentacle, of which it gets 2 attacks. It would have to attack you with the tentacle, grapple you, and then continuously pull you in 20 feet, which would be at most 3 rounds, depending how far away you are. And then if you start your next turn, basically in the same space or right up against this creature, basically the underside of the jellyfish with all the singing stuff and all that, you basically are restrained. And if you fail that check again on the next turn, you are petrified instantly.
Yeah,
that's a pretty scary monster.
And that lasts until the effect is ended by a greater restoration or similar.
Yeah.
Also immune to exhaustion, paralyzed, petrified, and prone, and has blind sight out to 60 feet. It's a nasty one, and it's only CR 11 as well.
Yeah, it's chunky enough. I'm surprised it has as few tentacle attacks.
I would have expected maybe like. Because like there's stuff like the multi-armed giant stone gargoyle that has like 5 attacks, and I know because I ran it a few weeks ago and it missed every attack. But no, it's I would like what I was immediately thinking of the first time I thought this was because I've used them fairly recently, was the Sky Swimmer, and the Sky Swimmer I think has 3 attacks and all of them are like 30-foot range. So I'm guessing maybe it's like a compensate for the fact that it has a 60-foot range on its attack. I think that might be maybe that's a bit of balancing here. Going, look, it's got this crazy reach. If we give it like 6 attacks around and the reel, it can literally just go grab an entire party and then pull them in, and they're all petrified.
What's the deal with it? Because it reminds me a little bit of a roper.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
A roper has a 50-foot reach. Yeah. And a roper gets 4 attacks. Now
what's the CR of a roper though? Isn't it like 5 or 8?
It's 5.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot less health. It's got way more armor actually. Oh my god. Yeah. Roper has 20 armor and this thing only has 13. But that makes sense because it's made of jelly.
You say that, but have you seen the reaction it has?
The reaction when the Death's Embrace is hit by an attack, one creature the Death's Embrace is grappling, chosen by the Death's Embrace, takes the damage instead. Ooh.
No save.
No save. That's unreal.
Just happens. Yeah. So like, good luck.
It's definitely similar enough to a roper, although a roper has to use its action to pull someone up to 25 feet closer, whereas this thing just does it at the start of each turn.
This also does psychic damage, which I believe the roper does not.
No, the roper does. Actually, the roper's tentacles don't do any attacks. They just grapple you and
then pull you into the mouth.
And the mouth is in the middle, which is the big bite attack, which does 4d8 plus 4.
Yeah, but like, you got like a barb, they'll shrug off the roper. Like, the roper bites easy enough, but like the tentacle hits, they're a grapple, they're piercing, and there's 2d10 psychic attached every time.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's honestly, I really like it. This is one of my favorite stat blocks here. I also like the art is really cool as well because, and this sounds really gross, but the art is really cool because the underside of it looks like a big tongue.
I was just thinking that it's like a giant tongue, and it looks like the whole thing looks like an eyeless, spiny mouth with a giant tongue and all these tendrils that come out of it.
Yeah. No, it's a great stat block. Really, really cool monster. Well, that's another one I wanted to talk about. We see a return of a few of the ones we saw in Exandria. Not Exandria, but in
Wildmount.
Wildmount, thank you very much. Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. We see the Gloom Stalker is back, the Horizon back Tortoise is back, and the Moorbounder is back, which are all honestly 3 really cool animals that are just great to have in this.
I've used Gloom Stalkers, and I know admittedly I used 3 of them and 3 more flying creatures, but even like Gloom Stalkers are only challenge 6. Like, I put 4 level 11 party members up against 3 Gloom Stalkers and 3. It was some other kind of flying back creature, but like the Gloom Stalkers, like they pose the challenge. Like, they're really fun and really good. Their shriek is savage. It's like a 60-foot area, DC 13 con save, or be paralyzed until the end of the enemy's next turn. Like, they lasted, and like Gloom Stalkers, they've only 90 hit points. Multiple members of my party could do that in a round.
The thing is though, and this is something I find that comes up in D&D an awful lot, flying creatures can and will stay out of range. You know.
Oh, that's how I played them. They would literally just fly down. One of them would try the paralyzing shriek. If that didn't work, it would fly back up. And then when it did work, the rest would descend and start attacking.
Yeah.
Like
But I mean,
they're really
that
cool.
kind of makes sense of like a pack hunter perspective. You know, they would try to do something like that too.
But like their shadow step thing as well, teleport up to 40 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. It already has 40 feet. It already has 80 feet of fly, so it's got 120 feet of movement for the cost of a bonus action each turn.
True, and also like the thing is, it doesn't have the flyby ability that some flying creatures have, but
it does.
You could fly down, make your one bite attack and one claw attack, which do both piercing, slashing, and necrotic, and then bonus action move away without taking that attack opportunity.
Literally exactly what I was doing with them. They would fly down and either shriek or claw, and depending on how they went, then they would go and bamf like 40 feet up, no reactionary attacks, and they're out of range already. They're a really fun creature. I really, really enjoy them.
I really like the Horizon back tortoise.
Yes, oh my god, he reminds me so much of the turtle from God of War.
Yeah, or I was gonna say the lion turtles in Avatar as well.
Yeah, totally. But like, I know, I think it's just because, it's that I love that turtle in God of War so much. He's so awesome.
I think they're really, really cool. Just as in concept, I think they're really brilliant. And I think it's really fun world building that they use them, that they're so big, like that. The Kryn dynasty would be like, let's just put a bunch of like siege weaponry and stuff on top of them and a couple of towers, put up with goblins and let them go to town, like. And it's basically like it's essentially like a much slower version of the Oliphant and the Mumakil in the Oliphant and the Mumakil are the same thing, right?
They are, yeah.
They are, okay.
Oliphant is what people outside of God, why can I not remember the name of the place? Oliphant is what non-Southerns call them. Oh, right. Not Haradrim. That's the name of them. The Haradrim. Yeah, the Haradrim. The Haradrim call them Mumakil, and then everybody else calls them Oliphants, I think.
That sounds about right.
Again, open to correction, please.
Yes. Okay, here's a really cool one. And I'm honestly surprised this appeared here and not in the Wildmount book, because it feels like it's more pertinent to the Wildmount book. The monastics of the Cobalt Soul.
Yes.
We get 3 stat blocks, all really, really cool, by the way, of different members of the Mobalt Mole. Cobalt Soul. We have the monastic High Curator, the monastic Infiltrator, and then the monastic Operative. And they all have really cool stuff. Something interesting about all of them, which doesn't quite track with the subclass itself, but is still interesting nonetheless. All of their unarmed strikes do force damage.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Yeah, it's really cool. And as well, actually, their ranged attacks as well. Do I think as well?
A couple of them have ranged attacks where they can throw darts and stuff, and those darts do force damage.
Like, oh my god, that ability that the monastic High Curator has is really, really cool. Brain burn.
Brain burn, yeah. Honestly, do you know what? And this reminds me of the
Inquisitor of the Mind Flame.
Yeah, because they do the Mind Fire thing where they do a ton of psychic damage to you.
I remember
that brain burn is very similar to that. 8d6 psychics, a lot. Like, and it recharges on a 4 to 6 as well, and it can target up to 2 people.
And it's a DC 18.
That's a really, really good ability. That's a really good ability.
Yeah. They're only CR 10 as well.
Yeah, they're relatively low.
Yeah.
But they're great though. I mean, they have that. They have some of their force strikes are basically.
I didn't spot that for multi attack. Curator makes 3 force strikes and uses brain burn.
Each of those force strikes does 2d10 plus 6 force damage. Yeah.
These things do not fuck around.
No, absolutely not. And then like they have do you know what I love about the Cobalt Souls in general? They kind of tap into both wisdom and intelligence. You know, in terms of how they are monks, but they are curious about the world and they want to learn things. So, like, on top of all those really badass abilities, they also have Detect Magic, Detect Thoughts, Identify, and Scrying as spells that are prepared. I love that. They can even cast Detect Magic at will, actually. But that makes sense because, again, you kind of... Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I could see myself building, if I ever played in the campaign, I could see myself building a Cobalt Soul Monk and taking, like, Magic Initiate to get a couple extra... spells that are like inquisitive, like can detect magic, detect thoughts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and like if you actually look at the monastic infiltrator, then they actually have disguise self at will.
Yeah, which is perfect because they're meant to like infiltrate into organizations and find out information. They're basically really badass spies, and they also have detect thoughts, invisibility, dimension door, and zone of truth, which is awesome because they can extract the truth from people.
Yeah.
they have a thing called guarded mind. What is that? Artifacts you can't read their thoughts or determine if they're lying. That's really cool.
Oh, for a spy, yes, that's very
Yeah,
very cool.
very very cool.
Yeah, no, I'd love to
And then
play
you
Cobalt
have
Soul someday.
that's the infiltrator, and then you have the operative. The operative is the lowest level one of them, which is basically just a monk with very few extra abilities, barring the fact that they do a little bit of force damage on their darts.
Yeah.
And they can make a retaliatory strike as the action. Great stat blocks though, and look, you know what? You have these guys here. If you go down a little bit further, we have another group called
The Scholars of Allsight.
Well, them too. Well, I was actually going to say the Occultists of the Vermillion Dream. You mentioned the Cultists.
Ooh,
I think you
yes,
mentioned
sorry.
the Cultists earlier. But they're we won't get into what they're about too much because that's going into story territory.
These would be the guys that who first took Ruidium from the Netherdeep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, in terms of like, because we have a couple of cultist stat blocks.
They're not
in
great.
D&D already.
They're really not great.
They're fine, but they're just very basic is all.
Rather, I'll take that back. They're very good they're very good for low level parties.
Yes.
If I want to, I don't do cult storylines anymore because the cultist stat blocks are too shite. Because my party could just, like, one of them could just go in, do you want to take this cult? Yeah, I'll take this cult. And just go in and go bang, and they're all dead, like.
Whereas these guys actually have a little bit of extra oomph to them.
The Extollant has a really fun reaction.
Reflect Agony. When the Extollant is damaged by a creature within 60 feet, the creature must make a DC 15 Wisdom saving throw, taking 3d10 psychic damage on a fail, or half as much on a success. That's really good. That's kind of reminds me of the ability that Aerith has as a as a blood hunter.
Yeah, it's part of the Brandy Castigation.
That's it. Yeah, where you take psychic damage equal to the intelligence modifier of the blood hunter if you attack anyone, them or anyone near them. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's if they attack them or anyone within 5 feet of them.
Yes. Yeah. You take just extra, and that's just like however many points the psychic damage open up, which is nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. You also have the Occult Initiate, who are a little more like that's great art actually. By the way, for that's a Baxi. I love that. Oh my god, that's a Caracal.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Caracal. Yeah. I was only thinking recently. I'd love to like include like a Caracal Tabaxi or like a dire. I think who's that artist? That is it Jim something?
We're gonna have to be a little bit more specific.
Is it Jim Zope?
Oh, I don't know.
He's a comic artist.
While you're looking at it, about the Occult Initiate, they've got a really really fun recharge ability as well called Arcane Blast. Recharges on a 5 or 6. The Initiate creates an explosion of magical force in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point you can see within 120 feet. So basically the same as Fireball. Each creature in that area must make a DC 13 dex save. On a failed save, the creature takes 3d6 force damage and is pushed 10 feet away from the center of the area. On a successful save, it takes half as much and isn't pushed. I really like that. Like, it's nowhere near as powerful as Fireball, but still affects the same area, but it has the utility of actually pushing people. So, like, you could push them off a cliff with this, like.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I think the idea of pushing or pulling people is so underrated in D&D. People don't ever, like, you can tactically line up people and stuff and lightning bolt right through them if you're smart about how you attack them and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I think that kind of battlefield manipulation kind of goes over a lot of people's heads. And they're just like, no, if I just hit them enough, they'll die, so it doesn't matter. And there's also the Occult Silver Tongue, which is... similar stuff again, similar spells.
Once a day can summon an earth elemental.
That's a slightly weird thing, I think, for a cult that doesn't seem to have too much of an elemental feel to them. That's me. That's just me. I'm a bit. I'm not going to say peculiar, but I tend to keep things on theme or on brand, and that seems a little bit out there. If that makes sense. And as you mentioned before, we had them, and then we have also the Scholars of the Allsight, who are like an archaeology and kind of fact-finding guild within Ank'Harel.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to point out about these three groups, right, or rather these three collections of stat blocks, I wish they did more stuff like this. They do every now and again, but they don't do it very often. I like when they're like, here's kind of the ranks almost, or the positions within a guild or organization.
We had something
Here's
similar
like
in Strixhaven again with the we had like 3 stat blocks from each of the 4 houses.
Exactly, yeah. And I like that because, I mean, it means that, like, one thing I find sometimes is, like, if you put players up against some goblins, for example, early on, right?
Yeah.
But let's say you want to do a goblin campaign, and maybe it's only, like, levels,
That would
like...
be really fun, actually. That would be, like, super
I
fun.
say, high-level goblins would be amazing. But, like, let's say you want to do
Or,
a
like,
goblin
low-level
campaign.
goblins statted out in legendary gear.
So what? They still only like a challenge rating 1, but they have like
They're like
+3 swords.
They're like the definition of glass cannons in that they have like 15 hit points, but they're hitting you for 40.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think like what I like about these is that like you could feasibly go up against one of these guys. So let's just look here. Okay, Scholars of the alt site. Their first one is Scholarly Agent. That's a challenge rating 1. The next one is an Excavator, which is a challenge rating 3. And the last one is a Mastermind, which is a challenge rating 5, right? That scales up nicely to the point where from levels maybe 1 up until 5, you could reasonably be facing these guys. Now, I think they're actually typically good, but pointless sense. Like, it means that because
it says any alignment.
It does say alignment. But you could feasibly be going up against this group as an antagonist in your story for like a good few levels, you know? Yeah. Same thing with the other crowd as well, because we go with, it's a challenge rating 2 on the Occult Initiate, and then a challenge rating 6 on the Excellent, and then a challenge rating 8 on the Silver Tongue. And I'm like, again, that does you for a wide spectrum of like levels that you can make these guys the central enemy or antagonist of a campaign. And I just feel like, again, I'm always kind of like kicking myself when I'm like, oh, I'd like to put people up against orcs, but like I'd have to put them up against like 10 orcs of a very high level to make the combat even remotely good for people who are like, you know, level 10 and above.
Yeah, I get you.
And I think, I know they're designed to be low level enemies, but I'm like, oh, I'd love, like, what if the big bad in the campaign was a kobold? Like, that'd be amazing.
A kobold and a dragon mech.
That'd be like really, really good. Like, what if he was a kobold and he was like just the orchestrator of everything? What if he had like a 23 intelligence and he was just the most, and he was just like doing a bit of a what's your man from Sherlock?
Oh God, not Sherlock, but Sherlock. It's like Moriarty.
Moriarty. What if he was the Moriarty of the entire campaign, and you were there fighting like giants and drow, and a dragon invades, and you kill all of them, and it turns out that this kobold orchestrated the whole thing because he's just a criminal mastermind.
Oh God, I suddenly see
Connor.
I suddenly see Conor writing a new campaign tonight.
Yeah. My next campaign, the bad guy will end up being the goblin that you spoke to in session 1, and he's like, I took an interest in you, and so I made your lives hell for the next 20 levels.
Jesus Christ. It's like if I ever wanted to make God an NPC.
Okay. That's stat blocks. Okay, like I said, great, really, really good stat blocks in this, and I was fairly on board. I know some people didn't like it. I'm fully on board with the new design of stat blocks, where they're not lumping in long spell lists. They're just going, here are some spells that they cast, and here's some magical abilities they just have, which aren't necessarily spells. I love it. Yeah. I think it's really great. And I think this is one of the best monster collections we've got in a book for a while, I think.
Yeah, and I would say, so like, I think just going back to the whole thing of their changing the spellcasting now, kind of stripping the big long list out, just giving them more sort of like magical abilities almost. I think that's better personally, because I think it differentiates stuff from between players and non-player characters much more clearly. And with stuff like it could, like, there's legitimately a scenario where it could devolve into fireball, counterspell with cultists, like, and like spellcasting like monster stat blocks is like a very, very legitimate chance where it can nearly devolve into like the Magic the Gathering, where like I play this card, so I play this card, but I played this card, which triggers off the first. Like, yeah, you know, you can get it like spell, counterspell, counter that counterspell kind of stuff with those. And what I just like is, like, for example, the Scholarly Excavator, right? So because his whole thing is like he's he's like an excavator. He like digs up ruins and finds the history and the artifacts and all that stuff. So he deals double damage to structures, which is just brilliant. I love that. That's a beautiful touch. But then also he has his Thunderous Warhammer melee attack, which is just like, rather than just smacking you with a hammer, it's thunder damage. And then he has a telekinetic toss. The excavator targets one medium or smaller creature weighing 300 pounds or less that isn't being worn or carried. The target, which must be within 30 feet of the excavator and visible to it, is magically pushed 20 feet horizontally in a direction of the excavator's choice. If it's a creature, DC 13 strength save to resist the effect. Like, I love that he can just go like, get over there.
Or get over here.
Hey!
But that's what my mind went immediately, because he would just bonus action do that, pull you in 20 feet, line up with the shot of the hammer, and smack you as you come in.
Oh god, that'd be awful.
So good.
Ooh.
So very quickly, there's a couple of magic items. There's not a lot of magical items here. I think there's an okay list. There's some interesting stuff. Do you want to talk about the main magic item? It is a vestige, as they're called in the World of Exandria.
Sure thing. So this is probably the biggest, baddest magical item that did this. There's a few other ones that are like nice little kind of references for people who've been watching Critical Role for a while. Like there's the earrings of message from campaign 1 and stuff. Yeah. But the big bad one is the Jewel of Three Prayers, and you will find this if you run the adventure. Like, you will find this very, very early on when you run the adventure, and like I
think it's pretty safe to just say that like that is the object you will find in the grotto. Like,
oh yeah, no, I said that earlier, sure. Yeah. No, like you'll find this. As with all vestiges, you almost always come into possession of them in their dormant state, which means that they have lost the majority of their power and abilities until they find a suitable person who can reawaken them to their previous glory. So here we have the Jewel of Three Prayers. It is a vestige that is an amulet, belonging to Elixion, the character we were talking about earlier. And it's a symbol of his covenant with the three prime deities, as mentioned, Sehanine the Moonweaver, Avandra the Changebringer, and Corellon the Archheart. So when the jewel is found, only Sehanine's power thrums within the dormant heart, and the power of the other two deities waits to be reawakened by a hero or heroes who can follow in Elixion's footsteps. So it's got 3 stages, as all vestiges do: dormant, awakened, exalted. Well, all Matt Mercer's vestiges do, because other people do vestiges as well. In its dormant state, the Jewel of Three Prayers is a glittering golden disc attached to a fine golden chain, and the chain will, as all magic items do, resize to fit the wearer. In its dormant state, you gain a +1 bonus to AC. While wearing or holding the jewel, you can use an action to cause it to shed bright light in 15-foot radius and dim light for another 15 feet. And then the light will last until you extinguish it, with no action required to do so, which is a nice touch. The jewel has 3 charges and regains all charges at dawn. While holding the jewel, you can expend 1 charge to cast invisibility, which is pretty nice. Like AC boost, light source, and cast invisibility. Pretty solid for a first level vestige. Once you have awakened that, and normally the advancement of a vestige or an arms of the betrayers is the other ones, the evil vestiges, is done through like moments of like usually like extreme emotion, like rage or triumph, or like a character discovers like a facet about their destiny. So like, for the example, like as you progress through the story, this will naturally evolve as you hit certain plot points, basically.
Yeah, it can also be level specific as well if you want to go that route. Yeah,
you can totally do that as well. But I believe to get this to exalted would go beyond the levels of the adventure, because it's 3 to 12, I believe, isn't it?
It's 3 to 12, I believe.
If you're going by raw rules for vestiges, they don't hit stage 3 till 14, I think, or it's like at least when they say to start introducing that.
I haven't read it up in quite some time, so I can't remember entirely.
I've been doing some work on my campaign recently. I'm fairly sure I've been looking at that a bit. So once it awakens, though, in the awakened state, the jewel has received the blessing of Avandra, the Changebringer, and 3 delicate spires unfurl from the jewel center, like the buds of flowers opening in the spring. 3 lapis lazuli stones rest like dewdrops on these spires. The following benefits of the jewel improve. So the AC bonus becomes a +2, and the number of charges increases to 5, which is all really good. And it gains the following additional benefits now while you're using or while you're wearing or holding it. You can expend 1 charge to end one of the following conditions on yourself: grappled, paralyzed, or restrained. And when another creature you can see within 60 feet of you fails a saving throw, you can expend 1 of the jewel's charges as a reaction to enable them to re-roll the saving throw, possibly turning a failure into success. They have to use the new roll. so good to give you like party utility as well, in that you can be like, no, reroll that, just for.
Well, I think that kind of makes sense because this is kind of a central plot MacGuffin almost.
Yeah, MacGuffin is definitely a word for it.
Yes, and the thing is, like, if you're going to have that item in your party and it's central to the plot, who gets to carry it might be a bit of a debate. But if it's something that can benefit all people, even when one person is wielding it, then I think there'll be less of a debate about that. You know.
Totally. And then finally, once you get it to its exalted state, which is its third and final stage, in this state, the jewel has received the blessing of Carlon the Archheart. A gleaming emerald surrounded by a halo of gold appears on the jewel. The jewel's benefits improve to a +3, a bonus to your AC, and the charges now become 7 instead of 5. And it gains these additional properties, and just as a note for clarity, it still has all the previous ones mentioned as well. You gain the ability to breathe water and a swimming speed equal to your walking speed. Each of your allies within 30 feet of you gains the ability to breathe water and gains a swimming speed equal to its walking speed. As a bonus action, you can expend one of the jewel's charges to target yourself or another willing creature you can see within 15 feet. The target then teleports to an unoccupied space of your choice within 15 feet of yourself, along with any equipment they're wearing or carrying. The target appears in a flash of golden radiance, and each creature of your choice within 5 feet must make a DC 18 con save. On a failed save, the creature takes 4d10 radiant damage and is blinded until the start of your next turn, and on a successful save, they take half as much and aren't blinded.
You can see how that ability to breathe and swim and stuff is very cleverly placed at the right time for this artifact. Before you get into the late part of this campaign.
Pretty much right when you're getting your feet wet, this thing should pop out into third stage and let you all like swim and breathe and not be crushed by the horrendous pressure. Because that is actually something that they call out very specifically early on in the book, is that like this place is dark, it's full of awful creatures, and it's under an extreme amount of pressure. These are the rules for extreme pressure. Check them up here. And I think it's pretty good. That's probably I would say the biggest and baddest. I really like it. It's
a really cool vestige, yeah.
Like, it seems like slightly underpowered, I would say, compared to some of the other vestiges, but I can totally understand why, in that this is a vestige that gets to its third stage before you hit level 12.
Yeah, like you said, normally you would be a higher level before you get to that exalted stage, but because it needs to fit within a 3 to 12 story arc, then it makes sense why they would dumb it down a little bit, but let it fully evolve earlier on. Martin.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Connor.
That's all the time we have for today.
Ooh, wow! Sorry, we didn't even get into like there's medals of merit and fragments of suffering, which are both pretty awesome and cooler. Like
there's a couple extra bits we didn't get to. I didn't think, honestly, I did not think we'd be able to talk about as much with this book today, because we said we wouldn't get into the heavy story beats of it or anything like that. But we actually ended up talking quite a bit about the rivals. I thought we spent a lot of time on, but I that's my favorite part of what I've read in this book. Dartmouth or Goblin. I just think they're really, really great.
Dartmouth and his American cousin Brandon.
Brody.
Sorry, it was Brody. It was Brody the Goblin. Yes. Oh god.
So guys, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, topics you'd like us to cover, you can tweet us at MicFlayerspod on Twitter. You can find us on our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Radio Republic, and Google Podcasts. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
Mostly people can find me on the internet on Twitter at So Sorry It's Over, and that is it. I nearly did your thing for Twitter there, Jesus. And that's in the bottom right hand corner of my screen. You can also find me on the Micflayers Pod official Twitter account, which is at Micflayers Pod, down in the furthest right hand corner of our screen, right by the Twitter logo. Of course, you can always find me here every Friday, 6 p.m. Irish time, for a new episode of the Micflayers podcast. I don't know why I'm spacing my words out this weirdly. Connor, what about you?
You can find me pretty much on Twitter, mostly at 0.Conor, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important. And as Martin said, every 6 p.m. Irish time on all the aforementioned platforms for a new episode of the Micflayers podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Definitely recommend checking out this book if you want to pick it up on D&D Beyond or your local game store. Definitely worth a buy. But yeah, that's all from us. We will see you all next time. Have a good day.
Later, folks.